everyone, this is Stuart Crawford. Welcome back to the MSP Show. First off, my apologies. It's been a while since we did one of these programs. A lot of stuff going on in the MSP space, a lot of stuff going on with Elistic that has taken me away from doing this program. But we're back today, and I have a great guest. His name is Jack Smith with Initial.IT out in Denver, services Denver in the Front Range. Initial.IT's got a great story. First off, Jack, 20 years. Wow, that's quite an accomplishment. You know, you and a couple other MSPs this year, I know, are celebrating 20 years.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that. That's a big accomplishment.
Thanks, Stuart. I looking back, I honestly didn't look this far ahead, to be honest with you. Didn't know we'd be celebrating our 20th year.
I'm at 11 years now, Jack, and I'm wondering, do I have 9 more years of gas left in the tank, right?
Right.
But are you and a couple other clients I mentioned that I've worked with over for many years are all having that same 20-year anniversary this year. So congratulations. Look, let's go back. Let's look back 20 years. I mean, technology has come a long way in 20 years. If I remember back to 20 years, so it's 2021 now. So let's look at 2001. Y2K just happened. Mm-hmm. We just came out with Y2K. Unfortunately, we had all the events of September 11th in that year. Technology. What we were Windows 98 back then. NT, was it NT 351 or NT 4 out there at that time?
NT
4. Yeah.
It was NT 4 workstation and server, and our anniversary date is August 1st, which has some significance to it for a couple of reasons. But one of the main ones, we started out August 1st. And then, of course, 9/11 hit the next month. And the majority of, all of our clients were architects and engineers at the time. And our largest client, we were there 40 hours a week. Our largest client did predominantly government work. And on September 12th, all their government contracts were pulled. So this company went from about 55 people to about 20 in less than a week. And fortunately, they kept us on and we kept their technology running and all these sorts of things. And so we made it through that. But the story starts out with, I was in engineering. My oldest daughter, who's now 23, had just been born. I went away from maternity leave, came back, found everybody huddled around the NT4 server, staring at a blue screen. They asked me what was wrong with it. I said, I have no idea what's wrong with it. I don't do that. And they said, well, the guy before you did. So I kind of inherited that role, which I think a lot of people in the MSP space inherited that role in some fashion. So I took over that role, and within a year or so, had decided to move on out of engineering into IT and started working with 2 people that would ultimately become my business partners. So the owner of the company at the time decided to go inside his largest client as the chief technology officer. 3 of us got together, we incorporated, we had 2 weeks to incorporate, and I found myself in business with 2 people I'd known less than a year. Fast forward 10 years, one of them decided to go a different direction, and then in 2016, the remaining partner and myself decided to split the company. We were an Autodesk reseller at the time, and if anybody's familiar, or how familiar people are with Autodesk is quite the entity to be involved with, and it needed to be separated so that we could both give 100% attention. So I kept the IT, he took the Autodesk, and we still have mutual contracts with existing clients, and that's kind of the short, fast version of where we are today. But back then, I remember one of the things that got me to make that change out of engineering into IT was so new and young back then, right? The internet was new. We were it was a big deal if you had a T1. Everybody had dial-up modems. Companies only had one email address for the whole company, and one person would check it every day and print out the emails and go hand them out to people. It was just, we'd cleared, like you said, we'd cleared the Y2K hurdle, and it was just this big new thing. And so, so I jumped in both feet, and here I am 20 years later.
I reflect back, Jack, the first day we put Exchange 5.5 in, and everybody was able to get their own email address, and everybody was super happy.
Yep. I remember those days. And then Small Business Server, was a big thing in our industry. And the funny thing is, I look back to Small Business Server when it started, and Microsoft's whole premise was everything in one box, right? And even back then, we were telling people that's great, but not great. Like if you power the thing off, you're done. So even 20 years ago, we were doing multiple server environments for redundancy. And now it's just commonplace, right? That you don't even think twice without having a host and a replicator server or the cloud or anything like that, on-prem and hybrid. And we were doing it 20 years ago with Small Business Server. And I remember NT4, everybody talks about how solid NT4 was. Well, when you consider what NT4 had to do and the fact that it didn't go out on the internet, I mean, anything was solid that didn't go out on the internet, So it was, we saw a lot of different technologies. We saw a lot of different mindsets. I mean, even cell phones, right? I mean, the first time an end user could get email on their cell phone, that was a huge deal as well.
Yeah, you know what? I don't even remember that when that happened now. It was like a blur in time when we were able to get cell phone email on our smartphones. Or I don't even know I think my first smartphone probably was an iPhone. Then I went to an Android. Then I tried the Windows phone and went back to iPhone. Yeah, I've been through the gamut of them. But you mentioned Small Business Server, Jack, and I remember the uproar that was caused when Microsoft canceled Small Business Server.
Yep.
And I also remember my two partners in my MSP were very pure technical person. I was a marketing salesperson, but they were pure technical people, and they forbidden. I was forbidden for me to sell the Small Business Server because they wanted to have, Exchange on its own box, SQL Server on its own box, the domain controller on its own box, have backup domain. And I would say, guys, we're going to price ourselves out of some deals. And then Microsoft, I think it was the Minneapolis Partner Conference, and I just can't remember the exact year, but they came up with this 3-server bundle where you can buy Exchange, NT, or Windows Server, Exchange, and SQL Server, and put it across a 3-server license.
Right.
And that was acceptable for them. But no, Small Business Server, not in our vocabulary at IT Matters. We did not position it. And sometimes we lost deals and sometimes we won deals because we took that stand saying, well, why would you want to have all your eggs in one basket?
Right. Yeah, we approached we welcomed Small Business Server. We didn't have an issue with it. But we always paired it up with another box. And that's where, we were able to settle the environment down and get some continuity and some redundancy. But our biggest issue with Small Business Server was with our technicians it was me and 2 other guys at the time, was just remembering to use the wizards. Because if you didn't use the wizards in small business, you broke it. So if you tried to be an actual IT person with Small Business Server, it didn't like you and you broke it. And so that was the hardest thing for us, was to use the wizards. That's why they're there. Don't look under the hood, in other words, right? And that's what we spent the majority of our time reminding ourselves to do and what not to do. And I can remember installing Small Business Server, when it was on 4 or 5 CDs and of course floppy drives. And I can remember I've done my fair share of installs with Windows NT on floppies. 3 1/4 floppies and Autodesk software too, because like I said, we specialize in architects, engineers, and contractors, and we have our entire existence. And because the 2 people that I went into business with were ex-architects, and I was from the engineering field, so I did mechanical and plumbing design, and loading AutoCAD, loading architectural desktop with a stack of 43 1/4 floppies. I remember those days, and it was so yeah, we the first time we could download software was a big deal. The first time T1s were affordable was a big deal. So it's been interesting. And I was telling somebody the other day about the Windows Phone, and they were like, I didn't know Windows had. I go, here's my opinion. Windows is a software company, not a hardware company. And even with the Surface, and I have a Surface, and they're fine, but I don't think they'll go much further than that. And the Windows Phone, you thought the phone would have solved their inkling to go into hardware, because the Windows Phone was great for a while, but then ultimately it just kind of disappeared.
Yeah. That's
And
right. I mean,
I don't think it was because of the big charge by the iPhone. I just think that it couldn't keep up with Android or the just like the BlackBerry. Just like the BlackBerry went by the wayside.
here today, gone tomorrow. That's for sure. And I was thinking, when you mentioned back to just to kind of put a wrapper on small business server. I remember the day when Microsoft allowed us to have a backup domain controller in a small business server environment.
Yep. Yep. In that
That,
environment.
that was a big day. That was a
That
big
was a
day.
big deal. Yep. And that was the first thing we always did.
Yep. So Jack, 20 years. You obviously, learned a few things over the years. You mentioned that you came out of the engineering space, and your two partners were in the architect space. You've been doing the, as we officially abbreviate, the AEC community, almost one. I wouldn't say that to go and say that you're exclusively focusing on that, but that's where your majority of your clients lie. How important was it for Initial.IT to put their stake in the ground and say, hey, we're the IT company for architects, engineering, construction firms in Denver along the Front Range? How important was it for you guys to make that claim?
It was very important because at the time when we started, excuse me, there were a lot of individual IT people out there. We affectionately call them trunk slammers now, but single guy shops, single people shops, because IT was so young. The technologies were simple. The problems came within the AEC industry of the software that they utilize, Autodesk, even the Adobe products, right, for their marketing groups because marketing is big in that industry. They'll have, and then their interiors group as well, very graphically driven. Software outpaces hardware, 3 to 1. It always has, even back then. And so having the knowledge of those particular softwares and how to operate them and the demands that they place on the hardware positioned us in a great spot to be able to spec the correct hardware, support the hardware, and these were high-level machines even back in the day. And so once, us having firsthand knowledge, all three of us had ran at some point in our lives an Autodesk product in a production environment or an Adobe product in a production environment. And so we could stand there and talk with the end users and go deep into the product itself, that no, it's not supposed to do that when you're trying to execute this command. And we could kind of reverse engineer that process and determine whether it was the video card or what was the hardware component causing the issue. Because that was back in the day too, when plug and play was brand new and plug and play was not reliable. So, it was important for us to stay positioned in that market because of our knowledge, all three of ours collective knowledge of not only the industry itself, but the softwares and the hardware that it takes to design the things that these people design.
I had the same experience in the energy sector up in Canada, where you get a geophysicist who's running some pretty graphically intense applications, and not every IT service company understood what the requirements were to make that system run. Similar story that you just mentioned. We just did it from the energy side, which was a big. I put it as a big competitive advantage for us over the smaller firms. The old trunk slammer days. We all been there. The old trunk slammer days, and as our good friend Blake Schwank calls them, the Joe Ponytails of the world.
Yeah.
There's a lot of I think there's a lot of need for a specialization in the industry. You pick the specialization that you want. Some choose healthcare, some choose legal, some choose energy. You chose AEC. I think that's very, very important to have a company that understands the industry. I think you hit the nail on the head. What the experience the user has and how you can sit down and help the user. Because at the end of the day, the servers and the cloud solutions, all that are all nice, but at the end of the day, it's still people using technology. That's kind of what I'm hearing, as the underlying tone of what you're telling me.
Yep. Yeah. At the end of the day, somebody has to produce something, and I've been fortunate enough to watch the light year pace of development and improvement in design software. Going from standard 2D drafting to full on, building information modeling, all in the same product, 3D scanning. I mean, all these things that in this industry have been revolutionary in getting designs out to, the public and everybody. And it's been a fun ride, and it's been very interesting to watch. And having been in it for so long and involved with the tight community that is the AEC community, has provided us a ton of insight. We look at our end users in this particular base. They're very intelligent end users when it comes to technology. They belong to user groups. They belong to societies and organizations that sit and talk about the softwares they use, talk about the hardwares that they run it on. And we look at those people, we build those relationships with them, and we feed off of each other. And that's what's been fun about this industry, is that they're willing to sit down and have a technological conversation with you about how do they become more astute, or how can we support them better. Like, they'll even sit down and talk with us and say, this is our workflow process, because they understand our background and they understand our experience with the products they use every day. Other industries that we've been in and out of over the years don't necessarily operate that way. Medical is one of those that, it's rather cut and dry. I feel it can be rather cut and dry depending on what you're doing, but it's very user. This industry that we're in, AEC, is very end user, heavy. Like we have to sit down and talk with them. We have to figure out what they're trying to do. They bring softwares to us, new softwares in the industry that they're using, and we sit down with them, and it's an opportunity for us to learn from them. And then together we can now charge forward with taking their firm to the next level, because we both understand what's trying to be achieved, and it takes both of us to achieve that.
And again, I'm going to draw some comparisons from the AEC to the energy sector, based on my experiences, that they're having these user forums. They all know each other. So, an engineer or an architect at one firm has a friend that works at another firm. They come to these these user group meetings, much like oil and gas guys do. And if you can get a good reputation in that space, they talk to each other and share all the great work that you're doing, and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, our guy Smith figured that problem out using this particular software. Give him a call. And that's so. I also look at you build your reputation in that space. And one of the biggest challenges that MSPs have is obviously with growth and marketing. That word of mouth marketing can be a great referral, a great lead source for you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in our particular industry, because it's such a tight-knit industry that crosses many different disciplines, many different opportunities for people to come in contact with each other, we have to be very careful, because it's easy to get a black eye when you're in this tight of an industry. Excuse me. And I like that, because it forces us to stay on our toes. It forces us to keep our level of service at a very high level, and respectful and all those sorts of things. And so, because of just the nature of the way our client base operates, what I love about it is it gives us that opportunity to continually, every day, make a human connection with somebody, to be able to sit down and have a conversation again with an end user and talk about what their individual pain points are, not just from our contact at the firm, but each individual end user. My staff and we get those opportunities every day, and we can make their life better. And that's really what this is about for us. And when I started out, it was a job. It was, hey, this new thing, let's go check it out. Let's see what can happen. And it was exciting. Every day was exciting, just because we were new and technology was new and all of these things. And over the 20 years now, when I look back, it has not disappointed in any sense. Technology changes the way it does. That provides that living on the edge kind of feeling. Excuse me, being able to then sit down and have good conversation with end users about technology. That's another thing that has excited me over the years about being in the specific industries that we're in. And my staff, they love that opportunity as well. They love not, we always joke about this, they love being able to focus beyond the keyboard.
Yeah. I 100% get it. So one of the things, Jack, that I've also admired about everything you guys have done over at Initial IT is your philanthropic. I have a hard time getting my tongue around that word, but you guys are very actively involved in the community, and you're not only just from the AEC community, but the general business community as well, doing all kinds of different events with different or involvement with different charities and nonprofit organizations. Talk about that. How did that come to fruition? How did you get involved? In your in that part of the business. Is that something that you always done, or is that something you woke up one morning and said, we're gonna give back part of our, part of Initial IT back to the community?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it honestly started with my daughter. She was in college here locally. She got involved with the global medical brigades, and she started traveling the world through, in college and into other countries and teaching kids how to brush their teeth, or, it was all medical oriented and providing medical care to these countries and these villages and it was all over the globe, and it was amazing. I watched that. The world is such a smaller place now than it ever was when I was her age, and she's taken full advantage of it, and she's of the mindset that she wants to save the world. And that really inspired me. I stepped back and I looked at what she was doing, and I was in awe, and I thought, we've got to make a change for people. In 2016, which was the year that we had become a sole IT company, I did a local event here called Ride the Rockies for cycling, and it was over 6 days. I think it was 480 miles, 30,000 vertical feet, climbing mountain passes from mountain town to mountain town. And it was kind of a bucket list item for me. I'm a native here, and I've watched it as I've grown up. So anyway, we got accepted to do that, and I wrangled my cousin and a friend of mine into it. And it occurred to me at the same time, when I was sitting and thinking about it, I thought, I've gotten what I needed out of this, right? Just being accepted, because it's not everybody gets to do it. And I thought to myself, somebody else needs to benefit from us doing this. And so I created a website, and I contacted two charities. One is St. Baldrick's Kids with Cancer, their research, and the other one is Special Olympics here in Colorado. And then we started getting donations from all of my clients and everything, and we raised $6,000 in under 2 weeks for those two charities, and all we did was a bike ride. And I got so much out of that bike ride, and then of course, adding that component to it, kind of overflowed my cup, if you will, right? Like I'm benefiting other people. This is just really good stuff, kind of inspired by my daughter. So we then went on to create what on our website is called the social awareness page, and that's where we ask everybody, what's your social EQ? What are you doing to help? And it doesn't have to be across the globe. So what we focus on is local entities that need support, and the big ones, the American Cancer Society, all of those companies, those big organizations that are doing fantastic work. They're getting their funding, but it's the mom and pop startups, that we're helping out. So I look for local entities. I look for a good example on my local Starbucks. I saw a thing on the bulletin board of a woman who she's married to a military person. She has 3 kids of her own, and she's a foster parent. I think what they call her is an interim foster parent. So when a child is taken into protective services, they usually bring the child to her until they can figure out where the child needs to go. And so she'll only have them for 24 to 36 hours. She created a charity that she packs a small 24-hour bag for those kids, because when they show up on her doorstep, they don't have anything. And so I saw that on my local Starbucks. We grabbed it, we connected, and we've done bag packing events for her. We packed over 100 bags for her one day so that she can enjoy the Christmas month with her family, because she does it out of her garage. And we just find ways to engage the local, good efforts of people. And so we're always looking for that. And recently we're starting to engage with minority organizations as well. NOMA, National Organization of Minority Architects, is one that we're getting involved with to see how we can help further their cause. And that's one of the things that we do. We put their information up on our website to help drive their cause exposure, to get their exposure that they need. And it all was started by my daughter. Just watching what she does out in the world was very inspiring.
I don't think in the MSP space, Jack. I mean, although because that's the only industry I really know. I just don't think there's a lot of organizations focus on it. They focus on you know learning all the latest technical stuff, or the business clubs like BNI and those type of things. But I'm not saying the primary goal or objective for you in this approach is to get more business, but you know from a business growth perspective, though, you getting involved in these groups, again, not saying that's your primary cause, maybe it's not even on the radar, but I would think it would have some benefit to the Initial IT, just brand awareness in the business community, and also having some fringe type of other business benefits to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that I like to do is engage my vendors, right? Like Dell, for example. In one of our organizations that we work with called Housed, Working, and Healthy, it's a path out of homelessness. And we got Dell to donate 8 or 10 computers for them to get their operation up and running. So I always kind of like, you hear the term pay it forward. Well, I kind of pay it backward, like meaning that I go back to my vendors and I say, well, how can you get involved with us? How can you help effect change, even on a small scale? Because a company like Dell is not looking at these small 8 to 10, PC need kind of entities. And I feel that's kind of our job to bring that to them so that they don't get overlooked, and so they were able to benefit from Dell as well. And I mean, honestly, Stuart, for me, it's never been and never will be about brand exposure or business or anything like that. Really what it's about is that my company has enabled me to do that. My company has enabled us to take it one step further out into the community. And all of my clients are amazing clients that support us in all of this. Have supported me over the years of raising money for charities. I know I can always go to my client base. The majority of my client base has been with us at least 12 to 13 years. And they're just great people, and we're lucky that way. So I want to, I try to capitalize on that, and I try to get other people to look at their organization and say, how are we making a difference, and how can we be better at that sort of thing. So that's something that we're going after.
So, Jack, if you were able to travel back in time and visit the Jack Smith 20 years ago on August the 1st, who's getting into the business of day one, and you're able to have a conversation with yourself, what 3 words of wisdom or pearls of wisdom would you share with the younger you?
I don't know. That's difficult, Stuart, because one thing I can say is that I have grown a ton in the 20 years. I didn't have any of the answers when we started out. I mean, I was in the engineering trade. I had never ran a business. I had never done any of that. And I will say this, though. The one thing that I have learned over the 20 years is that business is all about relationships. And people say that all the time, but I like to think that I'm proof of that, right? I don't have a business degree. I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know how to do, none of us did, and it was by the grace of our client base and the relationships that we just built with them that got us where we are today and continues to drive us forward. And I think my advice to anybody would be, focus on the people in your organization, focus on the people in your client base. The technology or whatever it is you do for them will follow suit without any issue. You can't discount the relationships. You can't discount what those people bring every day to their company and every day to your relationship. And I think there's a lot of operational things I would probably say to my younger self not to do that we did, that we learned. But in the big picture, those are really they really don't mean much. I think the key is just put your faith in people and always do the right thing and always stand by what you do. I think that's all you really have in this life.
Good practical advice, Jack, for sure. So let's look at the future. I'm not going to say look, fast forward out 20 years, because I highly doubt you and I will be having a 40-year conversation.
Right.
I think we'll both be long retired from this industry by then. But let's look 5 or so years out. Where do you see the role of the MSP going in the future? Let's say 5 years. Are MSPs still going to be around, or are their position, the way they run their services, going to change, or where do you see MSPs in 5 years?
I think what you're going to see is it kind of alludes to what I just talked about, right? It's technology at the end of the day, like we've said. It comes down to somebody trying to do something, somebody having to produce something, a person having to produce something that started in their mind. So it's very human, and you're always going to need somebody to help you with the technology, because technology, just as software outpaces hardware, technology outpaces our ability to utilize it. We will always, as humans, be running behind the curve, and that's not a bad thing. But there's always going to need to be somebody there to help somebody else. I don't see AI as a whole nother animal, and something that I'm not 100%. I love the idea of it. I love what it can do, but I just think that 5 years down the road, the MSP's role is going to be very different, and I like to think it's going to be a lot more humanized than it is now.
I would concur with that, because last year, just before COVID hit, I had an opportunity to sit down with the guy who gave me my first job out of the military. He was in St. Petersburg. I just happened to be in St. Petersburg, and we hooked up. And he was from Calgary, so I just happened to be in the area. And I still remember a conversation I had with him, 30 some odd years ago now, where he said, Stuart, I'm going to give you an opportunity here. What do you want to do? Do you want to work in the back with all your servers, or I need a good person who can sit down and talk to the client, like a good end user support person. And I took him up on the end user support job. And I'll tell you, Jack, I didn't understand everything about NT4 servers or Exchange servers. I knew how to set them up and stuff like that. But I was the person who sat down and understood how the faxing software worked. Mm-hmm. So that when the assistant had to get a press release out at 5:00 before trading happened the next day, I helped her get it out. And I think that was so valuable of a service, because none of our competitors at the time were focused on the end users. They're always, Novell 4.1 servers were just coming out, NT3.5.1, all that time back then. Right. They wanted the greatest technology. And I said, you know what, I'm going to learn how, what was it, Fax something Pro worked or something like that, Mm-hmm. I can't remember. I remember just buying the box and installing by floppy disk, right? The 5 or 6 floppy disks came with it. Right. So I agree. I think at the end of the day, there's still users going to be using technology, and as long as you understand what the users have, how to use technology, you'll win at the end. Jack, we're almost out of time. Any last minute pearls of wisdom you can share on your 20 years of being in business?
I'll just have to say, it again. Everybody should strive to always do right by others, to understand that technology comes down to a human using it, developing it, creating it, advancing it. That can't happen without the human element. And so as a technical person in a technical world, we always focus here to focus on that human element of it, to focus on the human at the other end. And I would just offer that same advice.
And I do believe your tagline has that in it as well, right? So there you go. Perfect.
It does.
Yeah, so if you're interested in learning what Jack's got going on in Denver, check out Initial.IT.net. Lots of great information there. Check out what he's doing on the social awareness page too, like you mentioned. That's a great page he has on there with all kinds of information. Jack, thanks again for doing this. Congratulations on 20 years of being in business. That's not a feat a lot of people can make claim on. That's great. Congratulations for you guys. And here's to another 20 years, hopefully. of
Thank you
something
so
anyway.
much, Stuart.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the MFP show, and thanks to Jack for being our guest this week. Make sure you tune in. We do have lots of great past episodes on our Blog Talk Radio show and also on our YouTube channel. And make sure you check in. We'll have some more content down the road here for you. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in.